All right, everybody. This is another unscripted but bulleted noted video. Thanks for joining me, by the way. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I'm down here because my desk broke. I actually did a big arc fault on the power supply for my stand-up desk. So I'm down here in the sit-down zone. Anyways, I want to talk about left and right, how those words mean different things to Europeans versus Americans, and how the U.S. and European way of conserving their culture is actually anathema to each other. Like we are actually mutually exclusive. The American conservatism and the European conservatism are mutually exclusive because they are mutually destructive to our own power, right? And we're going to get more into that. But let's first talk about left and right, right? Where it first comes from is from the French Revolution, where the powers that wanted to, maintain the institutions, maintain the culture, sat on the right, whereas the ones who are the revolutionary force sat on the left. What this means now is, obviously, we're not going to keep the same meaning of the words exactly as it was then to where it is now, right? Okay, so words change meaning over time. Language is a living thing. Right at the moment means it means conservatism, but what is conservatism really? It means incremental change. Right? I don't think you're going to find a lot of America. And by the way, America is the one who makes the language now. Okay, so being the imperial hegemon means that we get to make the language. And what that means is that you all get to accept the American version of conservatism. And there's a European conservatism, and it is very different. It's also known as woke right, and I'm going to explain what that means in a minute. Okay, so incremental change, because Americans like change. We just want to do it incrementally and try things out, versus revolutionary change, which is the sort of left, the Democrat stuff, the defund the police, this crazy stuff that you see all the time, right? That's what left and right means now. Revolutionary versus incremental change. Now, the revolutionary change can also come from what is classically considered the right. It could come from a revolutionary change to want to restore institutions that have been gone for a long time, such as the hegemonic Catholic Church, or the governments of like monarchies, or even like the old American government from like 1790 or something, right? Like that's what they want. It's revolutionary because, right, it would be a complete destruction of our current system, right? So anyways, European identity. Let's talk about European identity. Now, European identity is founded on established history, institutions, and direct religious power, as in the Catholic Church would actually directly tell you like what to do. They would directly tell the government what to do, and have some direct and indirect powers there. And traditionalism, right? So this is the way we've done it. This is who we are. It is what it is. It is self-defining, right? What is an Englishman? An Englishman is what is who is an Englishman. That isn't an Englishman is an Englishman, right? And there's no other, and anybody else is everybody else. So there's a certain exclusivity to it, which is going to go into the identity crisis of Europe and America soon. But anyways, what's a funny thing though is that since Europe has denigrated American traditions and history pretty much since our founding, saying that, you're a very new country, you're like a child, you don't have real history, you don't really have real traditions. Strangely enough, that actually led to America being alienated from that founding force, like that binding force of a people's. So traditions and history doesn't really bind Americans together. Now, I know you're going to see a lot of people like shouting off on X about, they're heritage Americans. No, most Americans don't think that way. If you said that your grand whatever was on the Mayflower, we're going to look at you. We're going to say, that's nice. This is an Applebee's. No one cares. Nobody cares. It doesn't get you any extra titles. It doesn't make your vote count more. It doesn't give you any sort of privileges. It's just sort of a dorky thing to bring up at parties that no one actually gives a crap about. And if you try to say that you're more American than another American, you're probably going to get punched in the face maybe by another heritage American. Anyways, the fact that America has to find its own binding force means that we ended up turning more towards a little bit of liberalism, but our history is that of conflict. And it's those conflicts that actually shaped the American identity, right? So what is America? Well, we're founded on an elected representative body, which means that the common people have a say. Before it was landed men, right? And then it expanded and expanded and expanded. And once you expand voting rights, it doesn't contract necessarily unless you have a revolution. So anybody who's talking about restricting voting rights, except for in a very small and incremental way, like maybe say mail-in ballots shall be no longer allowed, okay? That's an incremental change. Whereas like repealing the 19th is a revolutionary change, okay? Keep that in mind for later. All right, so Americans believe in limited government, which is to allow our self-determination. Okay, so we're not a place that has religious laws. And anytime we've had a religious law, we've repealed it. Okay, like we don't usually govern religion. One notable exception is like the Mormon Extermination Act. I think it was 1864. I forget, maybe 1865. We usually don't govern religion. You're free to move about the country. Which would be hilarious, because if we were able to govern religion, then the religion of Catholics would probably be the ones that get restricted. If you're familiar with people who are on like Twitter, you know that they are the most like militarized towards a religious government, and I don't think they realize how outnumbered they would be. It would be a Protestant government, and they would probably be the ones getting restricted. But whatever. Hopefully, they get the reciprocity that they so deserve. Anyways. Self-determination and Christianity, but again, the Christianity is not governed. The thing about free will and self-determination is that if you, by legislation, tell someone to be good, they're not actually being good. Now, obviously, you punish crimes, but you don't typically punish vices. Okay, if you want to, now you might say like, there's no gambling in my state, but if someone goes and gambles in Las Vegas and then comes back, it's not like they've committed a crime, right? And then the one time that we, on a nationwide scale, governed vices was alcohol, and that turned out to be a massive disaster. Okay, that's exactly what happened. By the way, if you want to see what happens when you have Christian nationalism, look at prohibition. That's usually what you get, is because you can't legislate morality among a people. Okay, it doesn't work out. Anyways, and Americans have internalized that lesson. So what Europeans don't understand about America is. America had to fight for a lot of to build the social technology to survive, right? We were not a curated people, Americans. We were a people who had to struggle, conflict, internal, external. We had wars, internal and external. We've had massive debates. And the liberalism that we started with is not the liberalism that we ended up with, obviously, right? And liberalism is a big word, but unfortunately for a lot of people, especially I think the Lotus Eaters get pretty... Carl Benjamin and these guys are really guilty of it. They think liberalism is one big school of thought, and you're either in it completely or you're not in it, right? Americans do stuff a la carte. We define stuff ourselves, okay? And ours is not necessarily a blank slate, but we treat people equally. One of the guiding principles of our government and the people that make our country, because we're not ruled by our government. We rule our government, and I think we proved that in 2024, and we continue to prove it every day when we get what we voted for. American democracy works because we're very involved in it, and we treat it like it's our life and death. Like we vote as if it's life and death. We believe in voting so much that we'll throw dynamite at cops, like in Athens, Tennessee. Count Dankula has a really good video on Athens, Tennessee. We take our democratic duty very seriously. Therefore, the system tends to work, because we are really fighting for it. And it's a constant fight. It's a multi-dimensional fight. You have districting, you have the actual votes, you have registrations, you have to get the other side, your side, the middle, everyone in between to vote, and you have to build a coalition of the willing internally. Anyways, and that means we have a lot of social discourse all the time. Like, take European conservatism. It's very ethnic, right? Like, Germany is for Germans who are Germanic. They have a German history, a German language, a German heritage, and sometimes even German money. However, if you try to have an ethno-state in America, that'll go down about as well as the KKK. The KKK got completely laughed out of the building. Like, even as soon as people started hearing about it, it became a subject of mockery. And they are pretty much the butt of the joke for the rest of American history. And they believed in an ethnic, also anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish, anti-Black, pro-white, let's maintain the ethnic status quo, and that failed, right? That is the biggest proof that America just doesn't have the appetite for it. Carpetbaggers or not, there's going to be people moving around, and your ethnic survival is entirely up to yourself. Like, America's not here to protect any particular ethnic group, except from, illegal immigrants or stuff. There's rules, right? There's rules for the conflict. But this is not a place where you have some chosen ethnic group that is the golden ones who have special privileges and rights. See my earlier statements about heritage Americans. You got to fight it out yourself. All right, so the thing that Europeans don't understand is that all of this conflict has actually led to Americans creating their own form of liberalism and conservatism, all right? That is very difficult to pin down because Americans are not that self-reflective. Like, not only do we not think about it ourselves, we also just don't write it down. But inside of each American, if you quiz them, you're going to find a very fascinating creature. And I'm surprised that more Europeans don't come to America and just pick Americans' brains. I feel like the Europeans have really screwed themselves over because they've been so judgmental on Americans. They haven't sat down and studied what this creature actually is. And now that we are becoming the very assertive, like we were the global hegemon, but it was in a very backseat sort of way where we were deferential to England and Germany and France. We were trying, deferential to France so much that we got sucked into a war in Vietnam, right? Europe had a tremendous amount of power over the United States. We were trying to help and trying to restore them. Now, I don't think America gives a rat's ass about Europe at all. In fact, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, who's probably going to be the president in 2028, actively loathes them in a sort of I'm disappointed and God, you guys are useless sort of way, which I share the sentiment in many, many ways. Anyways, these social technologies that Americans generated over all of this conflict, like no guarantees. America's not about quality. America's about conflict. It's about survival, okay? People will say, like, well, why do your houses made out of sticks? I was like, first off, our houses are pretty strong. You'd be surprised. Second off, we're only going to live in them for a certain amount of time. Most people don't stay in the houses they were born in, okay? We move around. There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of churn. And that just comes with the territory. And any American who doesn't want to take part in this churn, by the way, can just refuse to take part in it. Like the Amish have refused to take part in the churn since the 1800s when they first got here from Germany. And by the way, being the hegemon, we call them the Pennsylvania Dutch. They're not Dutch, they were Germans. But the thing is, the German word for German is Deutsch. So we just misheard them, and they got a nickname, and that's how it sticks, okay? They're Dutch now, yeah. Hey, you're German? No, you're Dutch. You're Dutch. Yeah. All right. Anyways, and they're doing well, actually. Their birth rate is pretty good. Maybe they'll inherit the United States. Anyways, these social technologies that have allowed us to keep going have been sort of breeding like a gain-of-function petri dish over here. Now, this is the part where it gets pretty serious. Is because our emergent success in the post-war period and the emergent success that we're going to have now, it means that America is going to be very successful. Now, what does American success means? Oh, American success is a complete denigration of European cohesiveness. And let me explain that. When you see someone doing something different and they are wildly successful, you will erode your own style. This is a really silly example, but in the, I think was it Jerry Bruckheimer? I don't remember who made the bad bat. They're not that bad. It's the weird Batman movies, okay? And there was Harvey Two-Face. This is the Batman before Batman begins, okay? Harvey Two-Face and the Riddler. Okay, so you have the two actors. Well, the thing is, Jim Carrey was so over the top. That's the reason why Tommy Lee Jones acted way over the top. Tommy Lee Jones actually loathed. By the way, Tommy Lee Jones is Europe in this example. Tommy Lee Jones loathed Jim Carrey. He did not like this man. However, he started following suit and also acting manic and crazy, right? He started acting more like Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey is like America. You end up having Europeans and European governments trying to act more like America, but not knowing how to do it. Because first off, they're not that analytical about how Americans think and how America works. Second off, these things that make America what it is actually dissolve European identity. Now, let me get on to what an American actually is. If you want to skip to this video, like 13 minute, 45 second mark, this is where I define what American is. An American, and this is through revealed preference. This is not my opinion. So tons of people online are talking about, an American is someone who is from colonial stock and, can eat a cheeseburger or some stupid shit like that. All right. So no, this is revealed preference. A revealed preference is that Americans are hardworking, okay? If you had, and ask yourself this, by the way, ask yourself if there was the quintessential heritage American, but he lacked these qualities, would he still be an American? Like, would he still be in the spirit of America? If you had a heritage American that wasn't hardworking, just a fat slob in his basement on X, streaming all day, you'd be like, man, that's a crappy American. He'd be an American, but he'd be a crappy American. All right, hardworking is part of being an American. Patriotic. Okay, well, what if this heritage American was also a complete commie? It just hated America. Well, and he's the opposite of patriotic. Deduct American points, okay? Singularly loyal. That means that you don't have these mixed loyalties, that you're loyal to some foreign nation or some entity that you put above America. The only thing you're allowed to put it before America is your family and God. That's the traditional American way. God, family, nation. right? That's what binds us. See, so if you have these dual loyalties, like maybe you're more loyal to Ukraine, like you believe in giving taxpayer money to Ukraine above America, you're deducting American points, okay? Pro-social. Americans are pro-social. Americans don't bowl alone. Americans invite friends to go bowling. Americans will go to someone's party if it's time to go to someone's party. We are not Finnish, okay? We are not the Finns. The Finns will stay home. Finns are not pro-social. That's fine. That's fine for the Finns. But Americans, you will go to the dance. You will go to the prom. It's less American if you don't go to the prom, okay? So if you had this lazy, non-patriotic, loyal to some other foreign country, non-social, next one, heroic. Heroic. Veterancy is the main thing about heroism. But like, there's pizza drivers that jump into burning buildings to save pets and even people, right? That's heroic. And you think to yourself, damn, that's an American. Americans are heroic. This is not, by the way, these qualities are not to say that Europeans are not this way, but you become less of an American if you have these, because I will get to why America is actually meritocratic. We believe in merit over blood, okay? Law-abiding, but rule-breaking. This is a weird one. I had to think about this one. America is a place of laws, okay? But sometimes we know that our laws are not good for us, and there's a certain amount of rebellion. Like, we are a country that was born of rebellion. So you'll follow the laws, but you will break the rules. The nuance there is that we will try to make things work, or we will do it in protest. Like, I will follow the law that I am not supposed to drive on the beach, right? Let's say there's a nice beach here and people aren't supposed to drive on it, but we've always drove on it. I am going to get something that's technically not a vehicle, right? I will get like a kinetically powered, like a bicycle, sort of four-wheeled bicycle thing, right? I'm breaking the rules. I'm not breaking the law. Breaking the law would be something more serious. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but Americans are rules breakers, but we are very law abiding. Strangely enough, driving is one of the things that Americans get really crazy about. Breaking a law when you're driving is horrendously bad. Breaking a rule when you're driving is just as bad. So there's certain things we break rules. Anyways, but all this comes from Christian values. So Christian values, not Christian domination. Christian domination would be that they would be like the Puritans, the Pilgrims. And the Puritans are not looked upon well, by the way. They're a part of American history. One of the powers of American history is that we just destroy it whenever we want to. We're like, oh, we don't like these people, now they're enemies. And America, like the founding Americans, the Pilgrims, become un-American, the Puritans. And we denigrate that because it just didn't work, right? Again, we're an evolving creature. It's a living people. It's a living history. It's a living, just like the Constitution is a living document. Anyways, Christian values, though. We do go by Christian values, not by Christian laws. Christian values of, it is his will that all be saved. There's a certain universality to it, right? All of a sudden, all this like blood magic or whatever of your ancestry doesn't matter because we want to save everybody. It is his will that it all be saved. It's not necessarily that everyone will be saved, right? But that's where you have to start looking at merit, because the next thing is you will know us by our fruits. You will know us by our fruits is a Christian principle that you will know goodness. You will know someone who belongs. You will know someone who is proper. You will know the truth by the fruits that it produces, okay? So that's another win for meritocracy. That is the criteria upon which you will decide which church is true, right? The Christian church is the one we chose. And so far, by the way, our fruits are pretty good. Anyways, it is his will that all be saved. Of course, like his will is always countered by human free agency, right? Human willpower, free will, sorry. So it is his will in God that all be saved, but it is man's will that foils that. And that's the story of the Bible pretty much in a nutshell all the time, right? Which goes into another part of the Christian values, that we are all sinners. All right, there's no one here that's holy. All right, that's part of the Christian values, that no one's holier than thou. There's no anointed ones who get to tell us what to do. Whereas in Europe, they're conditioned to have anointed ones who tell them what to do. And you could see that in their politics. You could see that in their responses to global pandemics. You could see that in their responses to pretty much everything, is that there are better people. There are blue bloods, right? There are nobles who tell them what to do. America doesn't believe in that. All right. We also believe that everyone is made in the image of God, which means everyone is sacred, but fallen, of course, because we're all sinners. All right. So the Christian values of America actually leads us to be a meritocracy that is fairly open-minded, but our history, though, is that we're very high scrutiny. We're very high scrutiny of people. and you have to have certain qualities if you want to really hang. Again, like the previous qualities I had: hardworking, patriotic, singularly loyal, pro-social, heroic, law-abiding, but rule-breaking, right? Liberalism itself doesn't dissolve culture, but it does allow cultures to engage in culture wars. And what do I mean by this is that there has been a culture war for a long time between America and Europe. And it continues to rage. And it is taking the form of the woke right, which is the European conservative, versus the American conservative, the Americans versus the Eurocons. That's the real war, okay? This real struggle of these two different peoples is a little bit like, I want to say David and Goliath, because David's not going to win this one, and Goliath is going to win the big one. America is a huge behemoth. It is going to rage through. I think it's going to. The Eurocons are barely holding on to their ability to have free speech and have access to elections. Which, by the way, they continue to say, I want free speech and elections, which are liberal values, which are American conservative values, not necessarily European ones. So Americans are not very, Americans think that European conservatives are kind of scum. Once you boil down what's going on, American conservatives would look at European conservatives and say they're scum. Because European conservatives, do they believe in free speech? Now, the English believe in... the English are different than the other Europeans, because the English do believe in open debate. Okay, that's great. All right, so you have open debate, and there's a bit of free speech. But if you start going back, it's like, what type of Englander are you? How far back do you want to go? Do you want to go back to King James? Do you want to go back to Catholic troubles? Between Protestants and Catholic English, I don't even know what England wants to be, right? If they want to go to tradition, I'm like, what part of your tradition do you want to go to? Because if I talk to one of these Eurocons, the woke rights, they want to go to some distant part of England's past. They don't want to go back to the 90s. They don't want to go back to the 50s. They don't want to go back to just before World War I. Right? What do they want to do? I don't know what they want to do. They're going to have to fight that out. Americans do not like any of the... In fact, Americans don't like the present day sort of Orwellian nature of England, which is coming from their liberals. Their liberals they're not even on the same American spectrum, right? The sort of rights that Americans have, the sort of identity that Americans have, is completely on a different spectrum that they don't even touch anywhere on their political spectrum. And it's really... The rights are the things that we have the most in common with England. However, the identity is not. They are struggling. The English are struggling to understand what the American identity is. American identity is very much a meritocracy. Again, let's go back. If I had a heritage American, his ancestor was on the Mayflower, okay, and I had a Cuban who moved here when he was 4, and the heritage American is a lazy. He hates America. He loves giving all of our tax money to Ukraine. He's antisocial. He's a coward, and he does SNAP fraud, what is it, the food bank fraud or whatever it is. He's getting kickbacks from the government or whatever. He's getting free stuff from the government. He pretended he has disability or something like that. But he has the magical blood, okay? He's got the magical Mayflower blood. And then you got the Cuban refugee whose name is Jose, and he works hard. He's he started out mowing lawns, and now he's got a landscaping business. He's an American citizen proper. He loves America. He spits on Castro's face every day. He's got a picture of Castro just for spitting on. He's got to clean it up once a month because it's nasty. He's very social. He loves inviting people over. He loves getting to know his neighbors. He's learning who the old lady is on the street and going and checking on her, making sure she's okay. He's heroic. He runs into a burning building, which, and saves puppies. He is on the fire department. He's a volunteer firefighter, and he loves Jesus, and he's a Christian through and through, whereas the heritage American's an atheist. Do you tell me the heritage American has any status over Jose? No, he doesn't. Americans love Jose. We hate this guy. We hate that guy. We love Jose. This heritage American that doesn't embody any American values is not considered an American. He's considered scum, right? If he is an American, he's the lowest of the low types. This is more or less proof. And if you ask people in America, they'll agree with this. This is the proof that the American conservative identity is anathema to the European one, because the Europeans would say, well, he's still a foreigner though, right? Well, the problem is if you start, And if the Europeans budge 1 inch, this is where America starts dissolving Europe. If the Europeans budge 1 inch and start to think that their identity, which their national identity is tied to their ethnic identity, if their national identity is decoupled at all from their ethnic identity by allowing in really high quality people, and then they turn their national identity into a meritocracy, then their ethnic identity becomes at risk. Okay, and this is where it falls apart. Now, the fact that Europe is bringing in the worst people in the world is entirely beside the point. Imagine if they actually were doctors and engineers and stuff, and they were just flooding in massive numbers, and they were proper doctors and engineers, actually brilliant. It's amazing. It's a miracle, hallelujah. Like they would still dissolve as a people, as nations, because they would start to lose their national identity. America has a way of onboarding through trials and tribulations, just like converting to Christianity. To convert to an American, there are trials and tribulations you're supposed to go through as a people. It's like America is like a barrel nation. I'm going to call it a barrel nation because everyone gets a turn in the barrel. The Irish had a turn. The English, when they first got here, they had their turn in the barrel. They were at Roanoke. We lost an entire colony. You ever lose your keys? We lost a whole colony. We have no idea where they went. Still don't. Croatoan, what the fuck is that? Anyway, the English were in the barrel at first, okay? And then they had to build up, okay? Then the next one is the Scots-Irish. They were in the barrel next, right? And they went to Appalachia, and they killed all the Indians there. Don't even know the Indian's name anymore. There's some Blackfeet, I guess. They bred with a lot of the Indians, so now, like, a lot of them are actually Native American, have Native American blood. We don't worry about that. They built a still. They built their church. They live in Appalachia. It's amazing. They're the gateway to the West. Love them. And I live here now amongst them. I love them. They're great. Okay. Then the Irish came here. All right. Well, the Irish, they're in the barrel now. They're getting the crap jobs. Okay. And they're, for some reason, all going into the police work eventually. But they're working in the factories. They're dealing with the BS. Okay. Now the Italians, they're in the barrel. One of the reasons why there's a lot of hatred towards, or not hatred, that's a strong word, but a lot of antipathy towards Indian immigrants is that they're kind of skipping the barrel, right? Usually our immigrants go through really tough times and then they build themselves up. Even the American Jews, when they came here to New Amsterdam, now New York, and continue to come to New York during the different troubles of Europe, because whenever Europe sneezes, Jews come out and they sort of land on us, and we're like, put you to work, whatever, I don't care. They went through hard times. Okay, they actually had to work their way up. There's stories of them making clothes in their all the Jewish apartments had the sound of sewing machines as they're all making clothes to make some money, and they're all struggling, and then they make it. Okay, now they're selling diamonds. Who knows? But the Indians kind of skipped that. They kind of went from the top and then they moved over. There's a lot of lower level Indians. India is a very big country. It's over 1 billion people. So it's kind of weird to say Indians. It's almost like saying Europeans. It's which Europeans are you talking about? Which Indians? And the problem is they don't have a really great, as far as I know, a really great sub identity below Indian. So anyways, whole other thing, off topic. Europe's downfall after the 2 world wars started to exacerbate this problem, that Americans had a different system and a completely different way of having an identity. And the Europeans were now looking at America well, they're doing well. Why aren't we doing well? And part of their identity started becoming hating America. That's a response of the Americans, they don't have this, they don't have that, they suck at something, whatever. And they become an anti-culture. And an anti-culture is actually your first step towards losing your culture. Once you become an anti-something, you've lost the ability to have free agency. You just become an anti-thing. You ever had someone who, a girl that you know, who just hated another girl, and that was her whole personality? She just hates this one other girl, and it's you could do your own thing if you wanted to, but all you do is just hate on this girl. Europe is a little bit like that. Europe is that girl. Okay, America's the pretty princess, and people are wanting to be more like America, and including the European governments now, and a lot of the European people, and they become post-war. Boomerized, I guess, right? The boomer truth, as Academic Agent calls it. But but the boomer truth is people believing in all of these different American liberal ideas, which is the American liberalism. It's not any other liberalism. American liberalism is its own thing, which is, by the way, American liberalism is also the same as American conservatism. If you look at it, the leftism is what we call liberalism. See, the language is getting real stupid. That's why I tend not to mess with this. Anyways, the Europeans start trying to be more like us, but because of that, they start dissolving, right? They start dissolving, and they mistake it as liberalism being the enemy, when it's actually just a mixture of decadence, Decadence, being a constant loser and having someone stronger than you, like near you, who's just shooting culture all over you, and you just like, all of a sudden, if you want to be cool, you got to know America. If you want to go from being just a band in England to being a rock legend, you've got to appeal to Americans. And all of a sudden, all these cultures start trying to appeal to America, and a lot of their local culture starts going away, right? So, anyways, yes. So, the final note here is that a lot of European identity is actually built on power, their imperial power, right? Oh, we once ruled the world, or we had colonies here and there and thitherto. It's kind of hard to maintain your identity if you've built yourself up on being powerful and then you're not powerful anymore, right? It's like building your identity on being rich and then you've lost all your riches. It's like, what are you now? You're going to have a crisis of identity. Europe is in the middle of an identity crisis, and they're trying to look to their past, and they're trying to say like, we was kangs, they're trying to say like, oh, we were very powerful before. But the problem is if you keep saying, oh, we were powerful once, it just accentuates the fact that you're not powerful anymore, which then leads to resentment, which then leads to like blaming people who don't have anything to do with why you fell, right? Like, it also leads to you fighting your own savior, like biting the hand that feeds you. So America is actually trying to fight for freedom of speech in Europe, and they're just getting their hands bit left and right. And Americans, like the traditional Europeans, actually reject it. I think it was kind of funny. I think I saw a little bit from English conservatives trying to reject our bid to have freedom of speech in England because it was an American incursion, right? Is it like they can't fight for themselves. America tries to help and they refuse our help. So eventually you're just going to die out without American help. America is the imperial hegemon, right? Without our say-so, stuff isn't going to happen. And we're trying to make it happen, but it seems like they don't want it. So it's just very frustrating to me. But then again, you know what? Maybe they'd rather just die with their own identity or so-called identity than evolve for the time so that they can survive. Which I don't understand, because it's like you're now denying you're not doing the hard work of making a new tradition and a new identity so that your children can then thrive in the coming new world. You're just denying that the new world is there and trying to live in the past. That just doesn't seem like cultures go extinct because of that sort of hubris, right? But whatever, it is what it is, right? And when I say cultures go extinct, America's full of those cultures. When I look at Europe, I see like Native American tents. That's what I see. Anyways, sorry, I'm going on a long rant. This has been going for a while. But anyways, yes, I mentioned gain of function, Americans' free thought. Oh yeah, so here's the last note. Stuff like wokeism spun out of our universities. America is a gain of function laboratory of ideas. And our ideas are weaponized. They are packetized, weaponized. They're made into mimetic. They've given mimetic power so they can start spreading everywhere. And then America is also the one that makes the antidote to it, because we're patient one, and we're also the strongest patient. Like we're patient zero. Sorry, we're patient zero of the disease we created, but we're like super healthy. We're just like jacked and tan, so we can take the disease and we can survive it. But then we give the disease to everybody else. It's not necessarily on purpose. And the problem is that our diseases are also co-packetized with our powers. America, like take, for example, our ability to bring in immigrants, okay? Our ability to bring in immigrants has made America a better place. Most of the robber barons were immigrants. Like Vanderbilt, obviously, who worked on the railroads, built tons of railroads. He's Dutch, I think, right? Henry Ford has a Belgian mom and an Irish father, right? He's just a second-generation American, okay? Who else, right? Rockefeller. I think Rockefeller was foreign. I definitely know that, I'm going to forget this one. Scottish guy, worked on iron, Carnegie. Carnegie's Scottish. He's a straight-up Scotsman, right? We've been able to bring these immigrants in. And Ellis Island, if you look at the history of Ellis Island and how we selected people, like we would just look at you and just decide you have a mental disorder and just put an X on your shoulder. We wouldn't tell you what the X meant. The X meant you're going home is what that meant, because we don't need people with a mental disorder, okay? We were very selective with our immigrants. However, this sort of woke rapping kind of glazes over that part, right? The woke rapping kind of glazed over how horrendously cruel we were. We actually had quarantine. We had steerage is what we call it. It's basically a quarantine. like in the old Venetian days, where you'd be on the boat for a while, just waiting to get to Ellis Island. You'd be sitting there in the port, just stinking it up. And then you get to Ellis Island in your rags, and then you'd be called a retard and then sent home. That's the American immigrant experience, right? However, the woke people kind of like glazed over that and then think it's just some sort of like happy kumbaya crap. It was not, okay? And then, by the way, if you did make it into America, congratulations, you now get to work at some crappy factory where you're like breathing in soot and you might lose a finger. And there's like a kid with grease, like a grease bucket, like skittering through the roof. And that's congratulations. You know, you're working in a factory, like your wife is working in a factory sewing stuff. There's no trad wife crap here. Everybody's working. Anyways, however, this kumbaya image of how our immigration worked was passed on to the Europeans. And the problem is the Europeans all have social benefits for their local people, right? They're homogenous society. Now, homogenous societies allow you to do stuff like have welfare and not get taken advantage of as much. I'm sure it does, but not as much. However, you got a bunch of piss takers in that you've just kumbaya'd and shook hands with them and let them on in, and things don't work, right? And then you'll say like, well, immigration's bad, blah, which is, by the way, just as retarded as saying infinite immigration, never stop it. Because our immigrants are actually part of our American power. And we're going to continue with our power, gaining that Pareto distribution share of the good immigrants. And then we're going to use our nation as a big network. Like we're going to have a network effect of Americans that we've integrated by having a meritocracy so that we can then turn our immigrants into proper Americans who are fairly loyal, who are very hardworking, who are making lots of money. By the way, I like mercenaries more than I like soldiers. Soldiers fight for their nation, but mercenaries fight for their family. So all of a sudden, every American, the American materialism, like wanting to make more money, is actually just a reflection of our fight for our own individual families. Like when I go to my boss and I argue for more money, I'm doing that on behalf of my family. Okay, it's not just because I'm some greedy capitalist. Okay, which, by the way, communism was a European invention. Thank you so much for that. So you get to take credit. You had the first round of wokeism. We might have the last round. Anyways, the way that we process our immigrants gives us tremendous power. Okay, so saying no immigration ever is also doomed. Like America would be a shell. America would probably be conquered by a foreign power, I think, if we just stuck with the original stock. There are so many heroes who are immigrants after the founding, in the 1800s, even after 1965. Like the most decorated military unit in American history are Japanese in World War II. Japanese immigrants to America. They just kicked butt. Obviously, the great record of the Tuskegee Airmen defending bombing runs in Europe. Fantastic stuff. So our immigrants are actually a big source of power. But if you don't know how to wield that power, it just burns you. It's like saying like, it's like immigration is like fire. It's like, do you want unlimited fire just all the time everywhere? Or do you want to like have no fire ever? Don't do fire. Fire is always bad. It's like, these are both stupid things to think. So America is the one who's wielding fire, and it's going to burn the world one nation at a time unless they figure it out. Only other nation that's figured it out is Singapore. But they're a tiny, tiny little place. They're not going to, it just makes for a nice, it's a nice toll booth, toll booth nation. Anyways, I've been talking for enough time, 40 minutes. If you made it this far, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I don't know, like, comment, subscribe if you want. If you watch this far, I imagine you would. I don't know how you could watch 40 minutes of me ramble on about bullshit and then just like be like, meh, never see. I thought you might. All right, guys, catch you later. Bye.